Okay, so after this brilliant discussion on conflict theories, I will briefly talk about the challenges of intercultural communication and code of ethics, and briefly mention do and don't do, principles in volunteering. So basically, volunteering is usually requiring volunteers to engage in works conducted in different contexts, which could be culturally different from the volunteers' context. And for this, we need an kind of effective intercultural communication to develop strong and positive relationship with people. But unfortunately, it's not easy, and it requires consistent attention, energy, and skills. We will talk about some of them very briefly. And communication with someone who is culturally different from you can be, from time to time, challenging. So what should be taken into consideration in intercultural communication? The first point is there are some basic differences in the ways people of different cultures communicate, such as through the different use of words, voice, speech, and nonverbal. Example is body language. Within each culture, there are individual differences in the way people communicate, so maybe we should also be aware of these individual differences. In communicating with someone of a different culture, it is important to make sure you consider the person's cultural background. The things you do, things you say may be unacceptable in that context, that background. You need to be flexible in your communication style if you want to relate positively to people of different cultures. I think this is not only for the people from different cultures, but also from different, backgrounds individually. There are also limits to how much someone should try to shift his or her communication style to be like someone who is culturally different. So at the end of the day, you're considered, or you may be considered as an outsider, in your attempt to be similar to them. You should be careful, keeping in mind that there could be a limit for this. Openness, caring, and mutual respect for the dignity of individuals are essential qualities for effective communication. This is regardless of cultural differences, basically. There are great advantages throughout your life, to being knowledgeable, respectful, and open towards others who are culturally different from you. And I should say that, in social psychology, we also, know that those who are sensitive to intercultural differences are more willing to establish positive relationships with different members of the community, no matter which gender group they are from, what age they are at, and where their socioeconomic background. Are there any points that Vestina you want to mention regarding the intercultural communication? Because I will go to that question. I guess no. Okay, so I have a quick question for you that you can answer in 2 minutes in the chat box. The first question is, what are some of the unacceptable ways of communication in your culture? We are all coming from different contexts, so I assume there are some unacceptable ways of communication in our cultures. This is the first one. And the second one, what behaviors that one should be displaying while communicating with others in your culture? Sorry for the misspelling. So 2 questions. If you could answer them, very briefly in your chat box, that would be appreciated. Maura, are you receiving any replies? Because I'm not seeing my screen.
Yeah, I can see the chat.
Okay.
Okay, so feel free to share your answers, and then we'll just go through them briefly.
The first question is very interesting, actually.
And sometimes unacceptable ways of communication for one culture could be encouraged in another culture. So it could be quite different, interesting as well. Okay, Zainab said kissing man is unacceptable. Mauro said not to use hands while talking. This is not a joke. So you mean
this is replies to question number 1. If you don't use hands in Italy while talking, people are suspicious. Really?
Okay, that's interesting.
For me, being African, you know, our culture doesn't allow, for example, my colleagues, men, you know, maybe to see them, to give them a big hug and, you know, give them a peck. It's not acceptable in the traditional African culture.
Okay,
I like what Vincent said, don't insult the other person. It's one that resonates for us in Africa and also in the Middle East. There's a lot of respect.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Turning down tea. Yeah, this is in my culture as well. You know, even though you don't want to drink, you have to accept the last one.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you very much for your replies. Very interesting. And we will keep discussing this kind of issues in the following sections. You can still write into the chat box, but because the time is a bit limited, so maybe we should continue. Okay. Yeah, let's discuss a little bit about the code of conduct because volunteers are expected, actually required to follow a code of conduct of the organization that they are working with. So a code of conduct is a summary of the policies which apply to being a volunteer. This policy sets out the standards of behavior that an organization/charity expects from volunteers and identifies their rights and responsibilities as a volunteer. Compliance with the code of conduct is one condition of volunteers' involvement with the organization/charity and should be regarded as a minimum standard which they should know to work. And if volunteers are unsure whether a decision that they are about to make will breach the code of conduct, they should ask their immediate supervisor, team leader, or a member of the team. This third point is very important. It's not only for the volunteers, but for all, you know, general issues. Some of the issues, some of the circumstances are not that clear for you to make a decision whether it's a breach of conduct or not. So in that case, immediately contact your supervisor, team leader, or member of the team who can support you and support you in making a decision. And the last point is by working with the guidelines of code of conduct, volunteers contribute to the success of the organization they work with and also professional development of themselves in that process. I will now present a few points about code of conduct, and I would like you to know that I adapted them from the UN volunteer file. I can share you the link later on in the chat box. You can go and have a look at it. But I suppose that, you know, these general principles apply to many other organizations and contexts, including the volunteers work in many different countries. So the first one is volunteers ensure that they undertake their duties and in the interest of the organization they work with and uphold and promote the highest standard of ethical and professional conduct, as well as values inherent in volunteerism, such as commitment, engagement, and solidarity. Volunteers shall uphold the highest standards of efficiency, competence, and integrity. The concept of integrity includes, but is not limited to, probity, impartiality, fairness, honesty, and truthfulness in all matters affecting their work and status. Volunteers are guided by the motivation to devote their knowledge and abilities without regard to financial remuneration. Volunteers shall not use their function for the organization or charity or knowledge obtained for a form of private benefit of themselves or others to the detriment of others. Volunteers shall uphold, respect, and be loyal to the principles set out in the charter of the organization or charity, including respect for fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, and in the equal rights of all, regardless of their age, gender, race, nationality, ethnic, or religious identity. Volunteers show respect for all persons equally and shall not discriminate against any individual or group of individuals. So impartiality is also important here. Volunteers must report any breach of the organization charity to the officials whose responsibility is to take appropriate action. In particular, volunteers must report any form of discrimination, retaliation, or harassment, including sexual or gender harassment, and any form of sexual exploitation and abuse. They are obliged to cooperate with any duly authorized audits and investigations. Volunteers must comply with local laws and honor their private legal obligations. Functional privileges and immunities of the organization charity are no excuse for volunteers to fail to comply with local laws and their private legal obligations. In the spirit of respect for all persons, volunteers must not engage in any form of harassment as well as all forms of sexual exploitation and abuse. Volunteers are generally required to avoid any action, and in particular, any public statement which may reflect negatively on the organization, charity, or on the integrity, independence, and impartiality that are required by their function for the organization or charity. Unless authorized by the organization or charity or the host agency, volunteers shall not communicate to any government, entity, person, or any source of any information known to them by reason of their function for the organization or charity. These obligations do not end upon separation from the volunteering assignment. So whatever happens, it remains there, and unless unauthorized, volunteers are not allowed to release any information regarding the work or the organization. Simone, you have a question. We will come to that one after I finish this code of conduct. Volunteers shall not, unless authorized by the organization or charity, host agency, accept any honor, decoration, favor, gift, or remuneration from any government or non-governmental source for activities carried out in the course of their official functions. Volunteers are not authorized to speak or write public on behalf of the organization, which I already mentioned. So let me check the, or can someone read the question, please?
Yes, so the question is volunteering and being impartial. I find it difficult to hold in extreme situations, particularly, but also on a daily level, if really passionate about the cause.
Yeah, I can understand, Simone, how difficult that could be from time to time, particularly if you're feeling kind of affiliated or you're feeling sympathy towards one group, but not the other. That could be quite challenging. But again, I mean, even not only for the volunteering work, actually, for the professional, organizations, if you're working as a full-time staff in a conflict area, let's say, a conflict between two different religious groups or ethnic groups, then you are expected to support both of them at the same time with the same amount of, whatever, material, financial, psychosocial support. Yes, it is difficult, but it is manageable, I would say. Are there any other questions, Mauro?
Not for the moment, so you can go on.
Okay, so I mean this.
Yasin, I would have a comment to make. Like, it's very interesting looking at this code of conduct. And when I was looking at it, I was sort of thinking of situations that we've been aware of over the last few years with Oxfam and different organizations. Yeah. There can be, we often think, oh, people get involved in volunteering and charity work and they have very high ideals. But we also know that it can also be situations where there's a power element in charity volunteering, and people can get exploited in those situations. So it's very important to have the code of conduct, and the question is often, how do we hold people accountable? Yeah. Particularly with these big organizations, and what was mentioned earlier about people providing employment. If you criticize them, then they'll walk away. You've got the danger also with charities as well. People feel you can't criticize them because they'll walk away.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, in these circumstances, again, I will talk briefly about, some of the responsibilities and roles. There it is a bit unpacked, actually, that you're expected to protect yourself, your organization, and the people you are supporting. because it's a three-dimensional, you know, work that you're doing. You're responsible for yourself, you're responsible and accountable for your organization, and also for the people you are working with. So I can understand, you know, your point that there are sometimes, you know, power relations. One is, you know, suppressed or repressed by another, you know, senior, maybe member of the organization, or even by the colleagues, you know, peer with the same, you know, rank in the same level. This could also could be an example. We have some scenarios later on we will discuss. There may be also some reflections on that point, but a very good point, thank you. If no other points or comments, then I will continue.
Yes, please.
Okay. So in terms of the roles, volunteers have multiple roles that they should be aware of. First one is roles given to volunteers, you know, depend on their skills and experiences when they start, when they apply, but they can also build skills and then move to another position or another location. In the UK, for example, these may include fundraising, handling money, organizing or helping at events, leading or managing a group, giving advice, information and counseling. Roles in conflict areas may include aid distribution, medical care, outreach, organizing and helping information and awareness sessions, vocational workshops, skills training sessions, and driving, etc. They're usually expected to work, I mean, the volunteers are usually expected to work as a team supervised by a full-time staff who is responsible for the voluntary operations. If no comments or questions, I will go to the responsibilities. Okay, volunteers are required to come as scheduled and on time, carry out their tasks efficiently and honestly, commit time for the work, accept guidance and decisions for the volunteer coordinator, participate in orientations, trainings and meetings, you know, regularly updating all the information that the team members have, and keep internal information confidential. Volunteers have the right to receive an orientation, you know, about organization, mission, role, environment, staff benefits, you know, the duration of the work, you know, the parties involved, the NGOs, stakeholders, etc. They should get guidance and direction, you know, particularly what to do in the field, how to do it, and in case he or she needs, whether there will be support and supervision. Get training for their position, skills and knowledge, because they can, as I said, you know, if they are staying longer, for example, for 3 or 6 months, then they can learn new skills and then maybe move to another position, another location. They have the right to feel respected and recognized. They have the right to be provided a safe and supportive environment, be reimbursed for volunteer work related expenses, and have regular performance evaluations. Any questions, any comments? Okay. Okay, then let's have a look at, you know, what volunteers are expected, you know, or encouraged to do in volunteering. So volunteers should arrive on time, notify their supervisors well in advance if there is any problem in meeting their shift commitments, ensure that the organization or charity provides minimum security standards, because otherwise volunteers will not feel safe and they will not be able to work. They should be alert to any signs of or patterns of abuse or anything that may concern them, and always raise their suspicions to supervisors or support team. They should remain friendly with and attentive to people, be the best listener they can be, inform staff member at any sign of mounting tension, even, either between the team members or with the people they are supporting. Seek the guidance of supervising staff if they are not sure how to handle a situation. I think this is also relevant to the code of conduct, you know. Respect the diversity of beliefs and faith practices of people and volunteers. Maintain a high degree of professionalism and clear boundaries. Maintain confidentiality concerning the people, the organization, charity serves. The volunteers should collect and disseminate accurate information on available services that is easily understood, presented in relevant local language, and delivered with compassion. To provide a safe, calm environment, listen supportively, demonstrate compassion, and non-judgment, provide reassurance without making false promises, and promote access to medical care and support. Become aware of their strengths and weaknesses and inform their team members and supervisors in case they feel unable to work or support people. This could be due to physical, social, or psychological issues. And then we also have don't do kind of in volunteering. And based on this, volunteers should not waste their time because they are there for a reason and people need their support. They should not assume that they are an expert. They need to be attentive to rapidly changing situations, especially in conflict areas. They should not assume that the same traditions and way of communication apply everywhere. So we just discussed this intercultural communication. They should not generalize. All of us have stereotypes about places and people. We may have some information about them, but let's not generalize. We should not keep a biased mind. The information they have may not be true. So they should keep their mind open and willing to learn other things. They should not do something because they think it will be good, because for us it may be good, but maybe for the local community it won't be. So volunteers are expected to always engage in action with local experts, project leaders, and the community members to better identify the needs and the actions that they will take. Again, another list. Volunteers should not depart in haste, assuming their help is needed. So they should make a plan, even an evaluation of the situation, and then based on this, they should take an action. They should not go without experience or training in humanitarian or resource-constrained environments, having inappropriate clinical skills, or without the knowledge or skills to adapt any emergency environment. Travel, they should not travel if they are unsure that they are in the right frame of mind to work under sustained stress. They should not go without considering the impact on their health, personal life, family relations, and financial circumstances. Volunteers should not travel as an escape from personal difficulties at home, because psychologically you should be prepared to support these people without any challenges, difficulties you have personally. Volunteers should not travel and work as a healthcare provider without the appropriate vaccinations, medications, health insurance, and other insurances. Volunteers should not work alone, not using established emergency coordination and referral systems, assuming that if we don't do it, no one will. Yes, you are there to support people, but this should be planned and organized professionally. Any questions? Any comments?
We don't have comment in the chat, but
okay.
If somebody wants to make a question orally, please feel free to talk.
It's not actually a question, but I would like to share a positive example. While creating this new regional volunteering program for youth exchange and for young volunteers in Western Balkan 6, we had a lot of difficulties in terms of all the international, regional, and our, let's say, local, but national volunteering policies to having one clear document that will set a standards for some minimum of measures that organizers of volunteering, whether youth organizations or any other, have to provide in terms to ensure safe volunteering. So we came up with this code of ethics that all the sides that are involved in volunteering in this program will be obliged to adopt in terms of ensuring safe volunteering for the volunteers and organizers. And all the things that you actually mentioned through this presentation are part of the code of ethics. And also we're now developing safety protocols, since we will have public events such as festivals and stuff like that. We will have safety protocols, how to follow the concrete steps in terms, again, of security of volunteers.
Yeah, This is a very important point, actually. And some of organizations, provide this security training as well. There are basic, clear guidelines how to do, in a conflict area, if you're attacked or if your colleagues are attacked, if anything happened to you or your colleagues. Very good point.